turn the keys, the fingertips that reach out to touch them, the string that begs to be bent? Or is it in the notes on a page, a foot to a pedal, the infinite space between imagination and skill? Or is it simply music?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in the 13th Note Art of Mastery podcast. I am your host, Jeff Spike Wong. I am here to bring you a very unique episode today. This is an episode that I've been toying around the idea of somehow bringing Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do and martial arts on film. All these little things in my mind that I've thoroughly enjoyed all my entire lifetime. So, in the other day, I was sitting at home reviewing and watching the movie again. And when you know it, then the idea spawned. And the reason why I wanted to bring this to everyone today, because it is truly unique of what this film has changed and brought to the cinematic world. And my personal experience and results to that cultural change that happened. And this was so dynamically done for its time that I would like to kind of walk everybody through. I'm going to do commentary. So this isn't going to be all goofy and joke because, there's a lot of insightfulness, I think, that everybody can understand. Now, Bruce Lee, being the martial artist actor that he is, was born in America, believe it or not. And then he went back to Hong Kong and ultimately coming back to America when he was around 18 and relocated to Seattle. And the story goes on. So there's a lot of history, a lot of stories written about Bruce, including his own family members, of course, his widowed wife, Linda. And this is also what been said by Linda that is her favorite film. And this film has different names, but we know it now today as The Way of the Dragon. This is the only film that Bruce Lee wrote, direct, act, and choreographed the movie. So this is literally like if he was in control, similar to when Prince was in control of his career and made a record, everything was done his way. Back then in the Chinese culture, especially coming from where I was at in Taiwan, we already had the infiltration of Bruce Lee in our consciousness from his previous TV show, The Green Hornet. Of course, over there, when it went to Hong Kong, it was known as the Kato Show. And I don't know what they call it in Taiwan. I just remember as a little kid, I think I was around maybe 4 years old, something like that, when I saw that, and I was really blown away. Just, of course, Kung Fu. I've seen a lot of the martial arts, especially of those fans out there who watches martial arts movies such as the Shaw Brothers stuff. You very familiar with costume and period pieces and so forth, and all these flying up to buildings, jumping on trees. The martial arts and fighting, so forth, with weaponry was done very differently in that type of movies. Until Bruce Lee came about, we really never really saw combat fighting in a so-called street way or a realistic fighting in a sense. And now in the Western cinema, we had fighting, but it was really big ham-fisted fights that maybe you see with John Wayne or Robert Mitchum or people like that, and ultimately that when you saw a little martial arts, it's usually something like judo or maybe a karate chop like you see in Mel Helm movies. And believe it or not, during that time, Bruce Lee was actually a consultant in training some of these Hollywood people and doing choreographs. So he was already behind the scenes without people knowing that it was Bruce Lee. Now, of course, when he was in front of the camera with the Kato character in Green Hornets, we really fell in love with what he was doing, but it was Green Hornet's show. So it wasn't like it was featuring Bruce Lee. And ultimately, supposedly that the story comes out that he had this great idea to do the TV series, which ended up being Kung Fu with David Carradine. And of course, this rubs Bruce the wrong way because he felt there was a lot of racism in Hollywood, which I can attest to even when my days in Hollywood in the 80s going to 90s. Yeah, there was racism to our different races when it comes to representing, putting money behind you to market you on a global scale. So with that, the folks who's really into Bruce Lee, like myself, already know all the backstories of him going to Hong Kong, leaving television, Hollywood, to become more of a feature film. In his first feature film, he was actually casted to be a part player to let James Tien, who was supposedly been the star in the movie The Big Boss. And of course, his charisma with Bruce Lee on film was undeniable and so forth. And it kind of shifted to a Bruce Lee movie. Now, that movie had still not a lot of Jacundo, what we say, was sheer physicality and greatness of him as a martial arts, and be able to translate that into onto film fighting and so forth. We, as Bruce Lee fans, I remember as a kid going to the theater with my grandfather, and we sat through 2 showings of The Big Boss, and it was incredible to see that. So he, of course, my grandfather was in the movie business, in the film business, television business. So I got to see a lot of stuff behind scenes and so forth. So I will talk about these things as we go through the commentaries of The Way of the Dragon. Now, the other movie that came right after that in 71 was the Chinese Connection, or Fist of Fury. This is where he plays the student coming back and his master was murdered. And this was taken, of course, from supposedly a true story, and they kind of play off of this. And many martial arts movie has patterned this from this template. And Bruce Lee first introduced the nunchucks at that time in this movie. And it was just spectacular because that's the first time a lot of us kids, and if not just cinematic martial arts lovers, seen this weapon. And he did it so masterfully, taking down the entire Japanese dojo. So needless to say, I remember going to the theater in 71, around 7 years old, with my mom at that time. And if your ticket had a certain number, you were going to get a free pair of plastic nunchucks. So there was a lot of marketing, a lot of just hoopla to hype the movie. And needless to say, we didn't really need to hype Bruce Lee movies because we, as kids in Taiwan, already were big fans. Now move ahead. 8 years old in 1972. To us, Return of the Dragon was the original name, and in Chinese was 猛龙过江. Monglong, meaning the dragon had a fierceness in a way of almost magical powers that was undeniable force crossing the waters. So that was the interpretation. And I would explain some of this as we go through the movie. I believe the version of the film I'm going to use is in Mandarin. Of course, logistics and so forth. I had to upload and download and all kind of crap to kind of get this into the format we can use for streaming today. But I'm extremely excited because it allows me to kind of give you a premise in point of views in regards to the cultural movement and why these movies are shot certain way, done certain way, and certain things were said. So one of the things that in the Chinese Connection Fist of Fury movie was that the scene with going to the park, you couldn't go in because the Japanese dominance in the China at that time, and the kicking and breaking that no Chinese allowed kind of stood up for the Chinese people, as well as the sick men of Asia scene in that movie. So Chinese took a lot of pride in their culture, hitching their wagon onto Bruce Lee's bravado, his so-called power and heroism, to justifying that Chinese are a race of people of greatness, not just something that was bowing down and getting beaten up by other countries. So let's go forward with that. I'm going to go ahead and start this, and then I will go to, as we move along, how this works. So here we go. This is the intro. And I brought the volume down a little bit, so you're not going to have to hear all that, so forth. And let me bring myself back in here. And how did we do that? There we go. Is this movie going? We can see the intro starts. Now, I will say that as we were going into the theater to go to see this movie, and I didn't go on premiere night. There was just no way. Every theater in Taiwan, as far as I know of, was just packed around the corner of the buildings and so forth. to try to get tickets for this movie. So when I got tickets to the movie, it was like a couple of days later. There were still lines. The theater, it literally is waiting to get tickets for like an 11 p.m. showing, and this is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was very fortunate. I believe it was a weekday. Theater was packed. I was at a 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock evening showing. So this is, of course, his entry. One of the things that I studied this film like you wouldn't believe. I was such a Bruce Lee fan and martial arts practitioner that when I look back at all my history, and a lot of people know me, because I talked about this in other podcasts, that the most viewed movie ever made commercially that I've seen is definitely this movie. And this, nothing to sneeze at. I mean, I've seen Led Zeppelin's song remain the same in those movies hundreds of times as well. But this movie I studied. But I'm going to give you some impressions in regards to what I saw and when I saw it in the Chinese theater. When we're all sitting there in a packed theater, as you can imagine, if any one of you ever saw anything in a packed theater, I saw Star Wars in '77 in a packed theater. That was incredible. I saw The Sixth Sense in a packed theater. That was incredible. I saw The Matrix in the packed theater, so that was incredible. But these are all adult films. This is in 1972. I'm an 8-year-old kid amongst how many kids in that theater. Bruce Lee is still alive, mind you. He's a working actor. This is his new thing coming out that to us. And it was marketed as this is Bruce Lee's opus because magna opus. He is the one who wrote it. He is the one who starred in it. He directed it. He did everything to it. So for a actor that can do all that was extremely extraordinary. My grandfather, being in the business, introduced me to so many people in the business at that time. And we recognized just how important and how great Bruce Lee's talent and capacity could be for him to do all this by himself. So as you see, we saw the intro to the movie, and this is all the nice little graphic. We love the music for it. And this is shot in the Rome airport. And from what I understand from my research on this, that Bruce Lee set up over 150 shots in one day in the airport. Think about this. If they're moving and they're on a budget, I mean, this is not Hollywood by any stretch. So if you got a camera, you're setting down, you got the clapboard, this is scene one, click, action. Now we're going to shoot this. He set this up over 150 times in an airport while working there. So again, you have to look at the kind of things that he dealt with in the logistics to shoot this. Now, of course, everybody who's seen this movie knows the movie, so I'm going to just set the premise and kind of to go with that. He's a country bumpkin. He's very illiterate, can't really understand and read stuff or anything like that. He's a very good martial artist. He's been invited over to solve a family problem that they have from a family friend that is dealing with mobsters in Rome, Italy. And with this, of course, the thing that's setting him up of this country bumpkin makes it even more dynamic when he starts showing off his kung fu powers and martial arts skills. So, of course, the first set is he's very uncomfortable and he's showing this. And this is the part that we all kind of dig into Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is an actor, set part none, has a little of the fun factor and humor factor. And what I noticed when I watched this movie many times over, there's a quirkiness to him about this country bumpkin that almost reminds me of Doris Day and Calamity Jane, where they're just like, country gal going crazy, So he has this little country boy, I don't know what this is, but we ain't going to tolerate this. So he has those little herky jerky moments. And it was really fun to actually see this, and then have a reference. Now, this is comic relief. He wants to eat. And the kid freaks out because he looks scary, right? So I remember sitting in the theater seeing all this whole scene. We were all just laughing. And we're glued literally to the screen just because dynamic of Bruce is here. The movie has started, and here we go. So what is he doing? He's hungry. He's in the airport. He's going to go in there. Now, the scene here of the language is funny to us in Chinese, of course, is, here's a foreigner going in there and he wants to eat. He has no idea what he's doing. And in some ways, there's a Chinese comic book, The Old Master in Hong Kong, called Lao Fuzi. And some of you know that. The old master actually did panels of comics that has these type of humors in it. So who took from who? We really don't know because they were around the same time, the 60s and the 70s, right? So he's looking at this. And what's really funny too is if you look at it, he picks out all the food and it says Campbell's. I can pretty much tell you that there's no airport foods, the menus that would actually do that. So everything's shtick, meaning that it's scripted in and he thought it was funny. Look at his facial expressions. He's really good. He's got this, goofiness, trying to be, a little bit more relatable. And this is where I think Jackie Chan kind of played and also recognized the potential of where comedy comes into martial arts film. There's martial arts film that's very historic, legendary, made with a lot of folklore stories, different category. Then there's a contemporary martial arts movie that Bruce Lee kind of opened up to this. And prior to this, I don't recall any kind of contemporary martial arts movie that gave us this type of cinematic experience. So that was unique. So now he does his thing. He points at the menu. He gets all these soups. In Chinese culture, of course, you're not going to embarrass yourself in sense of, oh, I did something wrong, please take it back, or anything like that. We're going to grin and bear it, and we're going to eat the soup. And just the fact that just how animated Bruce can be, like this thing with the pepper and the salt shaker. It's a very Charlie Chaplin move. I'm just going right along. Everybody's not, disturbed that I just ordered 5 bowls of soup. So it's very funny. And of course, now the music and soundtrack and the Foley of this, I'm going to also touch on that quite a bit because from what I understand, Bruce Lee was hands-on. He worked with the percussion. He worked on the timing. He was hands-on everything in this movie. And this is why I call it the triple threat of the Bruce Lee, because he's not only looking at it from how I'm going to perform in this, how I'm going to put it together. He had to write the story and the pacing of it. Then he had to pace this and cutting and editing and how to shoot this to be able to be affordable to shoot. So all these things becomes way more than just, I can fight, I can look good on screen, I can act. And now, of course, the thing is now my belly's full.